Good evening from New York. A religious jihad by fundamentalist crusaders who believe that murder is justified, their acts of violence having the intended effect of changing behavior. Our fifth story in the countdown, not the Taliban, not Hamas, not Al-Qaeda. If the brutal murder of Dr. George Tiller, the Wichita OBGYN who among many other things provided abortions, does not qualify as an act of domestic terrorism, what does? Dr. Tiller having been gunned down in the vestibule of his church where he had been serving as an usher. His medical practice having been targeted many times before. In 1986, a bomb exploding on the roof of his clinic, he reopened. In 1993, Dr. Tiller shot in both arms by an anti-abortion activist. He returned to work. 2 months ago, Dr. Tiller acquitted on charges that he had performed 19 illegal late-term abortions in 2003. Kansas law permitting late-term abortions when two independent doctors agree a pregnant woman would be irreparably harmed by giving birth. Abortion in this country legal for the past 36 years. This man accused of deciding which laws apply and which do not. Police arresting Scott Roeder in connection with Dr. Tiller's murder. NBC News having learned that Mr. Roeder is a member of the Freeman militia with a previous 1996 conviction for possession of materials to make a bomb, who reportedly posted on the blog of the anti-abortion group Operation Rescue. Police finding the phone number for the senior policy advisor for Operation Rescue, herself convicted 20 years ago of conspiracy to bomb a clinic, in Roeder's car. Attorney General Holder directing the U.S. Marshals Service to increase security at Planned Parenthood and other facilities around the country to prevent related acts of violence. In April, an assessment from the Department of Homeland Security having warned of the threat from right-wing extremists, including, quote, lone wolf extremists capable of carrying out violent attacks. One passage warning that right-wing extremists, quote, may include groups and individuals that are dedicated to a single issue, such as opposition to abortion or immigration. The outcry from Republicans so vehement at that point that Homeland Security Secretary Napolitano apologized for the report. Conservative blogger Michelle Malkin among those who believe the report was referencing her, complaining of being targeted by a, quote, DHS hit job. In March, Ms. Malkin having linked, quite literally, Democrat Kathleen Sebelius to Dr. Tiller after the governor of Kansas had been nominated by President Obama to be Health and Human Services Secretary. Malkin citing, quote, her abortion extremism and ties to late-term abortionist George Tiller. When Mrs. Sebelius was confirmed, Malkin having alleged that the HHS secretary had, quote, lowballed the amount of campaign cash she received from infamous abortion doctor George Tiller. Today, Ms. Malkin decried, quote, the thoroughly evil, cold-blooded act of domestic terrorism. Yes, terrorism, not extremism, that killed Dr. Tiller, making no reference to the previous links she had made on her blog. Anti-abortion groups calling Dr. Tiller, quote, Tiller the killer, still calling him, in fact, that, blaming the doctor for his own murder.
We don't have the ability, like God himself, to control people as if they were robots. But the point that must be emphasized over and over and over again, pro-life leaders and the pro-life movement are not responsible for George Tiller's death. George Tiller was a mass murderer, and horrifically he reaped what he sowed.
Well, you heard Randall Terry. Those who believe in God are robots. Time now to call in our own analyst, Richard Wolff, the author of Renegade, The Making of a President. Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
We were to tonight discuss your book. Events obviously have overtaken those plans. We'll do so another night this week.
Thank you.
The Homeland Security Secretary, Ms. Napolitano, bowed to Republican outrage in April, apologizing for that DHS assessment that warned of violent acts by right-wing extremists. Are the Republicans in Congress still of the belief that the threat of right-wing extremist violence is some sort of fantasy out of the Obama administration?
Well, Republicans in Congress want to have it both ways. They want to endorse the goals and aims of that movement and not be seen to endorse the results of that movement. And it strikes me as very curious that people who claim to have a zero tolerance for those who incite Muslim terrorism, who incite that kind of hatred towards America, find it very easy to turn a blind eye to people who incite hatred and violence towards Americans who are going about their legal work in America today. And there is a direct link. And just to cite someone who maybe has some experience of violence in America, John Lewis, remember when he said in the campaign, when those people at the McCain rallies who were saying, kill him, about the now President of the United States, John Lewis said there is a direct link here between those who fan this kind of mob sentiment and the violence this country has seen. You know, they need to look closely in the mirror today and say, have I played a part, no matter how small, have I played a part in what has ended up as a very sad event for one man and his family?
We saw Dr. Tiller obviously come up in the nomination process for Sebelius. The GOP is not going to bring this up in connection with abortion and Roe v. Wade and Sotomayor, is it? I mean, this is now third rail stuff, is it not?
Well, the name is, but I don't think the fortunes of the Republican Party are nearly strong enough to say to this hardcore piece of the base, and I'm not talking about those who would embrace violence, but those who embrace the goals of that movement, it's not strong enough to say, you know what, we condemn this. And that's why our ears are ringing with the silence of the condemnation here. Yes, people lament the violence and the death, but they actually try and justify these acts by saying that the man was evil or committing horrendous acts. Again, he was within the law, and if you want to change the law, then you should debate the law, not go out and incite hatred. And if you incite hatred, you lead to violence.
Is the ember of common ground that the president seemed to have reached at Notre Dame